Okay, we have with us in our studios here now at eNCA the former President Thabo Mbeki. Thank you very much, Puleli Chuchi-Jones, for that update from here at Nasrec. Mr. Mbeki, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon, Dan.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Thanks.
It's been a long time. I've been in your vicinity, but we understand that as a former president of the organization and also as a veteran of the organization, you're one of those who are very concerned about the state of the organization, its health. Yesterday, the president of the ANC, Ramaphosa, saying the ANC is at its weakest and most vulnerable since the dawn of democracy. Do you share the sentiment?
Yes, no, definitely. I think he was quite right. He's quite right about this. And, you know, fortunately, in the presentation that's been made, the presentation was made yesterday on the matter of the renewal of the ANC. Very, very good presentation, which actually traced a lot of the problems from 2 decades back, which were identified within the movement when President Mandela was president of the ANC, raises issues. It was largely about the quality of membership that were attracting into the organization. Even in 1994, first ANC National Conference after we got into government. Even then, he raised this issue that we're attracting into our ranks people who only see the ANC as a step ladder to power, state power, and for the abuse of that power for self-enrichment. And that problem has been with us for all of these years. So in the presentation yesterday made on the state of the ANC, it dealt with this matter. And indeed, I think that essentially when you then begin to get accusations of people being corrupt and doing all these sorts of things, it's this kind of person who joined the ANC, not inspired by the policies or the values or so on of the ANC, but for these particular purposes. And of course, they will then behave in ways that are un-ANC. Now, I'm saying that's a problem. And so in terms of the discussion, about what is to be done, reflecting on what President Ramaphosa said. The ANC is at its weakest now than it's ever been since '94. The matter about the quality of the membership. The quality of the membership and therefore the quality of the branches when those people come together to constitute a branch and other things. Yeah. How does this branch relate to the community? If it's constituted of wrong people, it will interact wrongly.
Yeah. Do you think the drive to get 1 million members a few years ago was the right drive? Should then the ANC focus on the quality of membership even then?
Sure, absolutely correct, yes. We should have. We did call for that. Let's have 1 million members. But I think a mistake on our side was that we didn't look at our capacity to absorb 1 million members. Because even then, there was a policy of probation. So you ended a new member, a new person coming in, would be subject to a certain period of probation. So you need a sufficient number of people to take a person through that probationary period of a particular political quality. I'm saying we didn't look at our capacity to absorb 1 million members.
Yeah, how do you resolve then today your thinking around the challenges of, let's call it, the right cadre for the ANC?
Well, you see, that is part of what is being discussed. Very frankly, I think that you need to revamp in a very, very serious way the entire process of the admission of people into the ANC. It should not be sufficient merely to say, here is 20 rand, I buy my membership, I support the Constitution, all that, to go through particular processes. And even that when we talk about a branch in good standing, it should not be just we've got 100 members and so on. But what does this branch do? Does it engage the population to help to solve the problems of the people? If it doesn't, it's not a branch in good standing. So I'm saying there are many interventions like this which are being discussed, and I'm quite sure will be implemented.
Yeah, so some of the things that an organization would like yours would have to take, like the ANC would have to take, is, for example, the values and principles of what the ANC is supposed to stand for. In your view, what are those, President? What are those values and principles?
Most fundamental most fundamental requirement is for the ANC members to understand that really the only reason the ANC exists is to serve the people. That's very, very fundamental. There's no other reason why we exist. That's the reason why we exist is because we serve the people. Once you stop doing that, then indeed, what is the purpose of the ANC if it doesn't do that? Now, that particular value, I think is very fundamental. So that you, as an individual member, you say, but for me to be able to serve these people, even in my personal conduct, I can't go around and do socially bad things and come back to the same people and say, I want to serve you. They're going to chase you away. So I'm saying even in terms of your personal conduct, and then in terms of what, if you set up an ANC structure, or you become a minister or a president or whatever, you must be driven by that consciousness that in reality, the ANC must act as a servant of the people.
Now, servant leadership requires a particular behaviors, as you say, and some of them would involve, like respecting yourself, respecting the people, and sticking to the principle. The ANC, since 2012 in Mangaung, in its 100th anniversary, that conference has been speaking about renewal. In fact, the term was used, a decade of renewal. We are sitting at 2022, ANC still seized with renewal. Where are the sticking points? Where are the hurdles?
Well, I think it's really a question of implementation. It's largely a question of implementation. The decisions have been taken. The nature of the problem identified. What are the things that need to be corrected in order to make sure that the ANC is in the right place? Implementation has been the problem. Fortunately, that's what is being discussed now. That this thing can't just remain good policy. The policies become good by virtue of their successful implementation.
Yeah, and implementation is capacity and leadership. Do you think the ANC has lacked in that regard as well to implement its many very good policies?
I don't know. It might very well be that as leaders of the ANC, perhaps we get overwhelmed by the number of things that we have to do, and maybe we opt for the easier ones to do, maybe. The will and the understanding of the challenges, of the policies, the will to implement, and therefore planning your work and your time in such a way that you are actually able to implement. I'm saying it may very well be that what has happened is that we haven't organized ourselves in order to implement these good policies. Yeah.
Are you worried about winning the elections in 2024? Is that something that worries you? As the governing party, you've been in power since democracy, since 28, and you've fashioned yourself and positioned yourself historically as a leader of South African society, even during the liberation struggle.
Well, Dan, my view is that when we've seen the level of electoral support of the ANC shrinking over a period of time, it's really been essentially because of the misbehavior of the ANC, or at least what is read by the electorate as misbehavior. So they stay away. And that's been part of the feature of this diminution, is that in many instances the electors stay away. It's not that they shift allegiance to other parties. They just stay at home and not vote. In the hope, I'm certain, in the hope that this ANC will correct itself. And if the ANC does the right things, the ANC that we know, and actually does the right things that we expect of it, I'm quite sure that support would come back. So I think between now and 2024, the ANC has to address those issues. Why have we lost the support of the people, and then act on that?
Yeah, I guess the lack of trust or the amount of distrust has got higher. When I was covering the local government elections in 2016, I was deployed by eNCA at a polling station in Soweto. And I recall very clearly spending 2 to 2.5 hours with nobody coming in. And it's one of the most populated voting stations. And when the people came later on, I asked them, why are you not coming? They say, no, we're not going to vote for people who are stealing our money. Sure.
That's right. You see, you've heard, I mean, I have heard that when people, ANC people go campaigning, many of them, the people will respond to them by saying, here come the liars. And part of the reason I say that is because you issue an election manifesto and you say we're going to do this and that and that and the other. You get elected and those things don't happen. So the population then lose trust. How can we trust this person who consistently tells us lies? They commit themselves in these various ways, but once we've voted them in, they don't honor what they've promised. The trust will disappear.
Yeah, part of the lack of trust has been further exacerbated, in my view, what has come out of the State Capture Commission. And I understand what you're seized with as delegates in this National Policy Conference below the organizational renewal issues, what to do with what has been exposed. How do you think ANC can be rescued at all in terms of this fight back that we are perceiving from the state capture beneficiaries?
I think ANC has to be rescued. I mean, from my own perspective. We've got really to engage in whatever is necessary to make sure that, in a sense, we cleanse the ANC of these wrong things that it has been doing and reposition it so that it really does what it should do, which is to serve the people of South Africa. It's possible. It has to be done. And part of what I've said in this regard is that, you see, the ANC remains the biggest political formation in the country, most influential. If it collapsed tomorrow, and I'm not talking about getting defeated in elections and all that, I'm saying if it just collapsed, there would be a major, major crisis in the country because of the way it is this is a national government. The ruling party, governing party at national level, the governing party even in a lot of municipalities, in 9 of the provinces. I'm saying if you had suddenly it collapsed overnight, I'm not talking about failing in elections, it can, but just collapsing because of internal crisis and all of these things, it would present the country with a major, major challenge. In that sense, I've been saying, it's like what they said in the US in 2007, 2008, that there were certain banks that were too big to fail. I'm saying in that sense that I'm talking about, not failing in elections or being voted out. I'm just talking about because of the internal crisis, the things that President Ramaphosa was talking about what at the weakest now, factions and infighting and all of this, and suddenly, boom, ANC went. The country would be in real crisis. So even from that perspective, to say you can't impose a bad consequence on the country like that if you are a genuine member of the ANC. So we've got to make sure that this ANC does not transfer its problems to the population, to the country.
Yeah, and the impact we can see in society of the internal fighting, how it plays itself out Absolutely, at the local government level and other levels. But to cleanse itself, the ANC, to cleanse your organization, you have to take some bold decisions. You have to take some tough decisions. When something has gone bad, to fix it takes time, but sometimes you really have to be rough on it. What are these edges that you think must be ironed out in your view?
Well, one of the proposals that's made in the context of the renewal, which I think is a correct proposal, is that one of the things that the ANC must do is to do an audit of its members. Who are these people? Because we've been accumulating over the decades, since we became government, we have been saying every single year, there are people who are entering the ANC not because they believe in policies, but because they are. But they've been accumulating in the years. So in the end, how do you carry those sorts of persons in the organization? So hence the thing being raised about an audit. These lifetime audits must be done so that we can all check
Yeah. But you've been recently, President. You've been to various provinces addressing ANC members on the issue of renewal and giving your views very clearly and forthrightly. What is your sense of the situation on the ground involving those ANC members and the communities that they are serving? What are you getting out of them?
No, my sense is that exactly because you are talking to people at that level who are more directly in touch with the population every day. You're not talking about the people at the national level, but there's a much greater sensitivity to the challenge, to renew, to make sure that the ANC regains the support and the trust and so on of the people, and therefore a greater willingness to go through whatever processes are necessary to achieve this renewal. And that's my sense. I think there's a very strong sense at those lower levels in support of the renewal process.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about accountability. You mentioned the fact that some of the challenges in the ANC, including these members who are coming in for different intentions rather than serving the people, began all the way back to the start of democracy under President Mandela, continued under you, and we still have it today. So the sense of responsibility of the leadership, collective, including yourself, is it in a way that you are saying we failed to ensure that we had the right quality, or is it a sense that it was somebody else's problem?
No. It was our problem as a leadership. We recognized the problem quite early and talked about it. You can look at all of the conferences of the ANC, national conferences, national general councils, policy conferences, for 20 years. They all raise the same thing. But we, as leadership, in a sense, we failed to act.
So it was about implementation. Recognizing the problem was good, but you did not resolve it properly.
We didn't resolve it properly because it's difficult to deal with. Because here is a Thabo Mbeki who comes to Dan Moyane to say there was a branch secretary. I love the ANC. I've read the Constitution, and I'm ready to swear the oath. And here is my 20 rand. How is Dan Moyane going to chase me away? He said, okay, we've got a very good member, and take the 20 rand and issue a membership. I will discover 2 years later that your decision was wrong. So I'm saying it's a difficult issue to deal with.
So you do assume responsibility as a leadership for that particular failure and finding a way of seeing it. Now,
absolutely.
Let's look at the governance side of things, President Mbeki, is that we've got an electricity crisis in the country today. Let's just come to one of the biggest issues, and I understand the delegates are also discussing what could be done going forward. President Ramaphosa just the other week outlining new set of measures, but the ESCOM problem is not new, if I'm correct. Even under your presidency, when you were at the union buildings, there were still issues then, but they don't seem to have been tackled earlier on. Do you take some of the responsibility for having not acted proactively at the time?
Sure, yes, of course. But then it's a part of the challenge, in my view, about this ESCOM thing, is that I don't think we've had a thorough enough presentation of the nature of the problem. For instance, we got the 2 new power stations, Kusile and Medupi. When the contracts were being done, the tenders by ESCOM, they broke up the tenders into a number of tenders. So instead of doing a 10-key project to say that we need a power station Medupi of such and such a size, and how much electricity it must produce, by what time must it be ready, how much I'm going to pay for it, and let everybody bid for it. And then Dan Moyane Incorporated wins. Then it's the responsibility of Dan Moyane Incorporated to decide whom it subcontracts to it and all of that. They didn't go that route. They took those contracts and broke them up into pieces. So now ESCOM had a task to oversee the implementation of all of this. Everybody was one for this one police state thing must be successful. And they didn't have the capacity. They didn't have the capacity. So you get a situation right from the beginning that you have an ESCOM which is trying to build this power station by managing lots and lots of contracts. For instance, just give an example. these new power stations generate electricity at higher temperatures than the old coal-powered power stations. So now Thabo Mbeki Incorporated gets a contract for welding. And you forget to tell him that these new power stations generate electricity at higher temperatures. So you, of course, they weld whenever, and this unit is ready. Okay, let's switch it on, switch it on. The welding melts. So you got to shut it down, start again. Cost goes up, time. I'm saying then that kind of detail has not been discussed, so that we come to a more comprehensive understanding of the nature of this problem.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on the past, but it's good to hear you saying that there's a myriad of complex issues.
It's not the past, it's what's impacting now.
Yeah, but I'm talking about if you look at 2007, when load shedding started. I mean, your presidency was at its end at that time. That's when this problem really began, and it's got from bad to worse, as you say. But part of the problem, from what your answer, you're saying that there's a lot of issues around, like, for example, the temperature example that you are using. But we in the public, we don't understand all of that. We don't see that. When I switch on the plug, I want my light to be on. So are you hopeful that the measures, as announced by President Ramaphosa, in your view, knowing that background, will take us somewhere where load shedding in the short to medium term becomes a thing of the past for the country?
No, certainly, I mean, the proposals that are made are correct. Now, I wouldn't be able to estimate that, therefore, if you implement all of them as he listed them, the load shedding will have ended by such and such a time. But that they are correct, I would think they are correct. But how long this problem will persist, I don't know.
Now, let's look at the rest of the state. I would like your views. You spoke at the memorial service for the late Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte. You made a couple of points that got all of us in the country listening and speculating and saying all sorts of interpretations. But I just want to zoom in on the one about the Arab Spring first, because nobody wants that kind of an unrest that's happening. We just went through the July riots last year, not a pretty situation at all for any nation anywhere in the world. How close are we to an Arab Spring, in your view?
I really don't know. I really don't know, Dan, but we can't have a situation as we have it, of poor men, millions of people are poor, millions of people are unemployed and so on, and everything else is wrong, accompanied by a sense of hopelessness. If we had all of these problems, but something was happening which conveyed hope. So I'm unemployed, but so was Dan yesterday. But Dan now has got a job. It's going to come to me in 2 days' time. That is not happening. I'm saying that sense of hope in a situation which is so negative isn't there. You can't expect people just to do nothing. So in the end, I think something will spark off, a reaction which will be very bad.
What about the quality of the state? Year in after year in, the Auditor General warns us of lack of accountability, fraud and corruption at the local government level. Even the latest report by Auditor General Tsakani Maluleka painted that picture, and it's not a new phenomenon. And we see some municipalities just exist on paper because they are not delivering any service at all. Is the state facing collapse, or is it a failing state, or we're not there yet?
No, we're not there yet. No, we're not there yet. I mean, there are certain things that take the thing you're raising. I think the way we designed the financing of local government wasn't quite right. We made too much assumptions about the capacity of local government to generate funds. And that's restricted only really to the metro municipalities. The rest don't have the possibility. We've got to change the formula. We should have done that earlier. The problem persists. So it's not only just a matter of bad people being there, even the resources to make sure that the municipalities run properly and deliver services and so on. I think that's a matter that really needs addressing. But the other one, we go back to the state of the ANC. Once you put into positions of power at the municipal level as councillors, as mayors, and so on, this kind of person we're talking about, who came into the ANC not for the purposes of the value system of the ANC, you're bound to get a negative consequence. So for the ANC, I'm saying, the process of renewal, it must have direct consequences of the kind we're talking about. So we must not, the ANC must not be the one that complains about the quality of its own councillors. To change that, but I'm saying there are these other governance matters which are in all decisions that we took when we were in government, which I think were incorrect.
You're ready to change them?
Well, I'm not sure about the current government, but I hope people have experience should have told them. Of course, in the discussion of the district development model, this matter has arisen.
On that model, I was just thinking, I'm just going to use an example of a company. A company will have its board, will have its CEOs and its directors, but it will have the people who are managers who are doing things. Some of the successful companies, research after research in the world, shows that are those that who give them, the people on the ground, a sense of ownership. So there's a devolving of certain responsibilities, and there are those that remain central in terms of driving the strategy. Now let's come to the ANC and the government model that we're talking about. You find that at the level of certain things at the delivery, like at the level of a public hospital, the CEO of the hospital does not even have the say in who's contracted for the to maintain the boilers that will clean the sheets and the bedding for the patients. And when it's breakdown, they have to wait for somebody else. They don't have the power, but they need the sheets and the clean sheets. It's just an example, because we hear it now and again in the healthcare sector. I'm sure there could be similar examples in other sectors. What are your thoughts, I mean, as a leader, and what do you think the ANC, should the ANC look at this and change the model beyond just the district model in empowering or enabling or devolving some of the decision-making to the level of the CEO of the hospital, as an example?
Sure, I think that part of the... there are many things I think we need to review, that the ANC needs to review. We came into government in 1994 and changed whatever systems of governance and so on. Isn't it time to have a look at all of that? Where are we with that? Are our institutions the right ones? Is the mandate that they have, whether it's from the law or whatever else, is it mandate correct? And I'm saying that's part of what produces this decision about district development models. The local municipalities, in many instances, are too weak. So you can't depend on them to deliver services, and they'll fail by definition. Let's do the district thing. It's better for municipal government, but it also enables the other spheres of government to work together with regard to this district. It's part of this process, I'm saying, of reviewing what has been decided in the past, that we decided in the past. Is it working? Is it addressing the challenges that we need to address?
Yeah. The other point I want to get to while I have you, President Mbeki, is the question of you saying that there is no national plan to tackle poverty, unemployment, and inequality. So just to give you an opportunity to clarify, because since the dawn of democracy, we've had different plans. The RDP was the first plan, then we had GIE, then we had ASGISA, then we currently have the National Development Plan with its vision to 2030. So if you stand now and say on a platform with the ANC leader, members, and the country is listening to you and respects your views, and you say there's no plan, what do you actually mean there is no plan, when there have been these government plans? Are you talking about an ANC plan or a national government plan?
No, I'm talking about government plan. You mentioned then just now the National Development Plan. Called it the National Development Plan. It's actually a vision. It's not a plan.
So it's a misnomer.
It's called a plan, but it isn't. It's a very, very good vision. Where do we want to be, South Africa to be by 2030? And you deal with it in all its elements. Very, very correct. And I'm saying very good. Where is the plan to achieve this vision? Now, the plan will say that, for instance, Brasa, big crisis in Brasa, and you'll find it in what we call in government a plan now. It isn't a plan, it's a vision about the restoration of the railway tracks and so on. So the Ministry of Transport must then sit down and say, the railway tracks between Soweto and Johannesburg, some of them have been ripped apart and so on, and the electrical cables gone. How much are they going to cost to rebuild? Where's the money going to come from? Who's going to do the building? Within what time frames? How am I going to show that the things are not stolen? That's a plan. To realize the vision of the restoration of the Brasa infrastructure between Soweto and Johannesburg. It's the plan.
Yeah, because the vision, the NDP is like a vision that says this is where we would like to be by 2030, but the plan will be how do we get there? What are these nuts and bolts things that we need to do? You were also, in our view as the media, critical of the current president when he spoke about the 100 days that he had promised at the State of the Nation address around the social compact thing. Yesterday, in opening the conference of the policy conference of the ANC, he spoke to that, saying that work is underway, there's progress being made, and some people are frustrated by the slowness of the progress. I'm assuming, you correct me, you're one of those people who was frustrated, hence you expressed it at that platform at the memorial service of the late Deputy Secretary General J.C. Duarte. Listening to the president yesterday, have you changed your views now?
No, not at all. What I was saying then was, we talk about correctly challenge of poverty, unemployment, inequality. Very correct. Where is the plan to address those things? The vision is there about that, but where is the detailed plan to realize the vision? I was saying the President Ramaphosa realizing that this thing is not in place. He then said, look, you social partners must get together and address this issue and finish in 100 days. It's calling on social partners. He can't implement that. It's not, I wasn't criticizing him. I was saying he was addressing exactly this same problem. And then called on the social partners to meet and produce what he called a comprehensive social compact. A comprehensive social compact cannot be brought to South Africa by Cyril Ramaphosa. It requires the social partners to engage one another. And that's why he was then saying, but in the process of doing that, you must realize that there are many challenges. So it can't happen as you wish, because it will come from the social partners, not from Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yeah, so you were pointing a finger at this whole process of the social partners.
That's right, yeah.
One of the structures in the country we've had is NEDLAC, for example. You've got business there, you've got government there, you've got labor, you've got civil society organizations. They have to be part of the social compact agreement.
Sure.
Is the model correct? Is it failing? Does it need to change? Do we need to change the system of stakeholder engagement to enable the process to go forward faster?
No, I think the process is correct. We may have a problem of, in a sense, our history. That NEDLAC, for instance, really in essence was set up as a bargaining chamber. Now, when we talk about a comprehensive social compact, it's not a bargaining chamber. It's what is it that each one of us can contribute to. We've got a common objective to achieve, to eradicate poverty, unemployment. Agreed? All agreed. Okay. Business, what are you going to contribute? Government, what are you going to, labor, and so on. It's a different kind of process. So I'm saying that it may very well be, because the objectives are agreed, and the NEDLAC process, the social partners, the broad objectives are agreed. Now, in negotiating the detail of what it is that needs to be done to produce a plan, and probably we are, part of what holds us back is that we still treat the process as a bargaining process. I must win and see how much I get out of it. No, it's the country must win. And what do we do to bring our capacities together in order to ensure the country wins?
Do you get a sense, President, that sometimes we spend too much talking than doing?
I'm saying that's part of our legacy, to negotiate among ourselves. We've been doing that ever since the new South Africa was born, before it was born.
Even before, I mean,
even before
you were busy negotiating yourself across the world, yes.
So I think it's correct. Let's talk to one another.
But how do we fast track things? I mean, the crises are so many here, and the picture is very complex, and you are warning of an Arab Spring because people can't just sit back and wait. How do these partners and the government and the leadership of the country drive it so that it moves, and then people can see there's progress, things are being addressed, jobs are being created, the economy is being revived, for example?
Well, then, first of all, I mean, when you were quoting this thing about the country exploding, I hope that these partners heard me say that. In addition to which, I've been engaging all of the social partners individually to say to them, all of them, government, business, labor, to say to them, who are faced with this crisis. And you people have got to, you are the only people who can do it. The only people who can produce the social compact is the social partners, not Cyril Ramaphosa or somebody else. This is your responsibility together. Yeah. So we will continue to engage them. I'll continue to engage them like that, to say it's not just making public speeches, and to engage them. For instance, I say to them, if there's anything I can do to help to solve whatever might be obstacles, I'm ready to do it. Because they have to do it.
Yeah, and time might not be on the side of government and other social partners. Hopefully there'll be a realization from what you are saying. I can feel the urgency you are feeling. On another question which you touched on as well, at the memorial service of the late Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Jesse Duarte, was the issue of non-racialism, which has been at the core of what the ANC has stood for since 1912. Non-sexist organization, non-racialism, democratic organization. And I just want to step down and talk about it from the race question, or sometimes the ANC has dealt with it as a national question. It doesn't seem that we are succeeding. We started well, it seems, at the beginning of the democratic era, and now people are going back into their corners that are racially defined. And you yourself pointed it out, to say, let's look at ourselves as the ANC, as a governing party. Are we non-racial? You know, there are members of the ANC who are not African. There are members of the ANC who are Indian, colored, sure, and others. But we don't get to see them, for example, in the top 6. If you think about it. So what's your thoughts about how can the ANC redress the national question?
No, we've got to engage it very consciously, see to, and objectively. You might find, for instance, in certain areas, let us take, for instance, Western Cape, you might find that among some of the colored population, some people, not all, might feel a sense of being threatened by these Africans, in this sense, that if some employer wants to reduce costs, you'll have this black one, this African one, who's ready to take lower wages than me. That then encourages this hostility. So I'm saying that I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. For instance, because you are looking at it as objectively as possible, then as an ANC you would have, okay, in which case when we intervene to try and win over into the ranks of the ANC, into support of the ANC, how do we overcome obstacles of that kind? If the ANC, for instance, I know, let me say this as a fact, within the ANC, this issue of the Africans in the Western Cape, Africans in the country are in the majority. Therefore, with regard to the Western Cape ANC, we are the majority. You say no. The population mix in the Western Cape is different.
So you need to be conscious. You recognize it, yes.
Your membership and it must reflect that.
So we need to address this.
So you have to attend. You have to address it very consciously.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, as we conclude, President Mbeki, thank you very much for your time. The issue of success, when you undertake a policy conference like this one, you want to get an outcome. that will serve the organization very well going forward. In your view, what will that success look like now in the ANC now, knowing a couple of things? One, you've got a national elective conference coming up in December. Two, you've got general elections coming up in 2024 of the ANC. Three, the country is grappling with all these kind of crises that we've touched on currently. What would, for you, look like a successful policy conference come the end of it on Sunday?
Well, sure. I mean, first of all, Dan, as you know, the decisions that will come out of here are recommendations to the national conference.
Yes.
Policy-wise. So the challenge for the national policy conference is to produce policies that are realistic in the sense of responding correctly to the challenges the country faces today and different faces in 5 years' time. The correct policies must come out of that. And when you and I talk about this policy and you say to me, look, the policy conference decided as follows. Tell me, how is it going to address the challenges of the country? That must be how you weigh the success of the policy conference. That the policies must be realistic to address these challenges of transformation, fight against poverty, inequality, and so on. Leaf might take the thing a little bit further. Of course, once adopted by national conference, what then becomes important is the National General Council, which comes 2.5 years later. Because that conference must look very closely, okay, 2.5 years ago we adopted these policies. Where are we with regard to implementation? And there must be consequences from that review by the National General Council. If the National Executive, elected in December, accounts in 2.5 years' time to that NHC, if it has not behaved itself in terms of implementing these good policies, there have got to be consequences about that. You can't say, look, we'll criticize you, but continue. No. You failed to do these things which the country demanded, which need to be done. I mean, how do I continue to count on you as my president or member of the NEC and so on, where you are incapable of implementation of these good policies? How you would deal with it, I don't know, but I'm saying the National General Council as a review body in terms of implementation to ensure accountability becomes a very important part.
So implementation is going to be very key, whatever the policies are agreed.
That's right.
Agreed. Thank you very much for your time, President Mbeki, here on eNCA, DSTV channel 403. That's the former president of the African National Congress, also of the Republic of South Africa, currently, of course, in terms of his constitution service, an ex-officio member of its National Executive Committee, just sharing with us here some of his insights and views about this national policy conference that's taking place here at Nasrec.